Hello and welcome to Property Matters. 40 minutes of lively chat and debate around all matters property and designed to be of interest to people with an interest in property. Property Matters is sponsored by Fairview International and also by, of course, Town and Country Property Auctions London. The property world is never far from the news, and as always, we'd love your views on the topics that we discussed this morning. And you can get in touch via the comments below today's video or, of course, by email propertymatterstv@gmail.com. And joining us on his sleigh this morning for Property Matters is, of course, our resident property expert, Joe Joshi. You managed to make it in despite the weather.
Well, the reindeers thought they'd had a few days off, but I had to sort of get them back into commission and say, "Come on, we can't be sitting being lazy here, Paul." And it's thick and fast out there. It's quite amazing. I was going to say it feels a lot like Christmas, but I think it feels a lot like winter.
Absolutely. We've got lots of things to talk about this morning. An interesting show for everyone today, I'm pleased to say. And this rather interesting topic came up, not exactly a news item, but I just thought it'd be nice to start with something a little bit light this morning. Do UK estate agents deserve their reputation, Joe? Firstly, I suppose the question ought to be, what do you think their reputation is?
Yeah, trust you to pick on that one, Paul. Yeah, I think, of course, being an estate agent for 40 odd years of my life, I will defend it with my honor, as they say, as far as that is concerned. But the truth is that I think it's like anything. It's not until you actually have the experience of what actually happens behind the scene. And I could actually put you back in the spotlight on this for a moment, Paul. We met some years back, and I don't think that you ever thought in your mind as an ordinary person out there that we do half as much as we actually do in the background, and what we actually, how many plates we spin to try and keep people moving and calm. We serve as pretty much everything from consultants, consoling, medical people, ideas, health, wealth, and you name it. But we actually get tarred with the same brushes as other trades that people love to hate, but actually can never do without. A couple of those are like the motor industry and the double glazing and the car and the insurance guy and all those people that, but if you actually sometimes sit down and think, especially currently, if I think back by insurance, there must be times when people have thought, thank God I continued making those payments. I didn't like the idea, but here is something that's happened in our life, and we've actually got something that might come back to us after all those years of paying out. And it's the same with agents, really. I think the value is only put in, and at the end, when the keys are there, and they think, thank God, it happened. But the truth is, we don't get recognized for all the good. We only get recognized for the bad. But then bad news sells, Paul. We know that.
I guess the reputation was earned, if there is a negative reputation, in presumably the 90s, I would imagine, with all the property booms and sort of late 80s with the yuppie sort of environment, and agents were making lots of money and there was lots of gazumping and all that sort of thing. I guess that's where it all stems from. Is that right, do you think?
I think it's much earlier than that. I think there's just a love-hate relationship with agents from people, because I think they feel that they earn too much money for what they do, but what they don't forget is that it is based mostly on a no sell, no fee basis, and there's lots of things that we don't get paid for. So they only remember the bit that they actually cough out for, but they forget the bit that they never do. But thank you for bringing that lovely subject to Sunday morning. I'm sure our listeners are really keen to see that. I'm defending my honor, gentlemen, ladies out there. This is the way it is.
So I thought it would be a great one to push this open to the viewers to say, come on, then give us your views on what you think the reputation of estate agents is, and is it deserved? And let's just see what comes in, shall we?
Yeah, thanks
Write the touch paper on that one.
Yeah, you did. Don't worry about that. I'll get you back.
So the stamp duty holiday, Joe, never far from the news. And whilst we've talked and debated the whole issue for many, many hours, it seems like, on this show since we started. And it has been the main topic. There's no getting away from it. It is the main topic in the property industry at the moment. But what's really interesting, aside from all the facts and the fact that might be 100,000 people can't make the deadline on the 31st of March, what's interesting is that the groundswell of support via the petition, the online petition, which is now at 119,000 signatures, which guarantees a petition debate in the House of Commons. Mr. Rees-Mogg, Jacob Rees-Mogg, has decided that he's going to suspend all petition debates forthwith due to COVID. And therefore, this debate will not be held with ministers and with MPs. It's going to be held and discussed in private, which just seems a little suspicious. I mean, it's not just this debate. Of course, it's all debates. But it is interesting, isn't it, Joe? What's your take on all of this?
Well, first and foremost, I think it's a great petition. It's a petition that I think most people should support, especially if you are currently in the process of moving, and especially if you're buying, you want to make sure that you get the benefit of the stamp duty at the end of the day. You know, every penny counts when it comes to moving home or dealing with any personal affairs. So it's right that it should happen. The pandemic has had lots and lots of U-turns that's happened during this last year, and I'm pretty certain in my heart that there will be probably a small U-turn made, or an extension of time will be given for this. And I'm sure they don't want to really, after all the good the government's been doing, want to be remembered for one little bad thing. As I said to you earlier on, bad news sells, and this is the sort of thing that you don't really want to be doing. In terms of hearing the petition, yeah, again, they will hide behind the fact that there are debates not going on, live debates, and social distancing are important, but I don't think it really needs to go private. The problem with the Rees-Moggs is that sometimes he makes sense, and sometimes he comes out with a complete load of tosh, and this is probably one of those moments of tosh as far as he's concerned. And it doesn't affect him and his circumstances, because he's well healed and well settled in wherever he is with his 5 or 6 children and adding. But the reality is that there's lots of people out there that are affected by this, and it is important that the government actually give it some time and air it, albeit it might be in a private pace, but it needs airing. And I think the Chancellor, our friend Rishi, as we will call him personally, because no good calling him anything different, I'm sure will come good in the end.
He's adamant, of course, this week again that he's not going to extend it. So if he's holding to the last minute, it's a little bit panto in the whole thing, isn't it? It's he's behind you type thing.
That's politics. It is panto. I mean, this is their moment to be on the stage in either shape or form. So I just think that may be. I mean, we might be completely wrong, and he might completely, not do it. But at the end of the day, there's a lot of voices, a lot of people that are saying that will be the case. And here, going back to your opening gambit of estate agents being, rubbished, we will be rubbished again for something that we probably never had any control over. But it was always our fault that we never pushed the sale through at the time, and we never advised the right thing. But actually, it's not in our hands.
No, and it's fair to say that the whole estate agency business has changed dramatically, not least in the last 12 months. That's right, Joe, isn't it? I mean, a lot of agents now working as self-employed, working from home. It's a very different model to what it was even 5 years ago.
Well, the model is evolving rapidly, and the high street agency world is becoming extinct, really, as time goes on. It's going to be the handful of the big boys that will probably end up sort of having something. But I think even the big boys will actually start to shrink it down. Their overheads are just too high, with lots of high street locations where people actually can work from home. So yeah, the agency world has dramatically changed, Paul, and it will continue to change. And we'll see more changes in the next 3 to 5 years, definitely.
On the same topic area, stamp duty, that's obviously having a massive effect on the market right now. So what's really interesting is to see the December figures come out this week, Joe. Not least the fact of the residential transactions in the UK last month at 129,000. Now, without anything to compare it to, let me just give you the percentages. 31% increase to the corresponding month in 2019. So December 2019 sales then are now 31% higher year on year in December, and that's 13% higher than it was in November. So we really are at the peak of the fever pitch for stamp duty deadline transactions.
Yes, and primarily when you think back through the last year, Paul, considering the changes the pandemic has made, it's quite interesting where the focus for people at home has gone, hasn't it? Really, I mean, moving home has become pretty much the top subject, in spite of the fact that we can't move around, considering that you've got to be meters away and you can't mix with people and so forth. And here we are with a home moving project that says that we want to move, and most of that has been driven by the pandemic and the way we started to think. So yes, it's interesting to see that even through that year of difficulty, the figures have not changed. And it goes back to my view, as I've always said, that the home is the one that is your best investment you'll make. And what this is doing is giving people time to think about where they can go to, because all of a sudden our whole work pattern, our whole way of life has changed. So the figures are good, even though they are good figures. There's still a certain underlining that the actual volume might be higher, but the actual value is probably not as high as previous years. But that's still, considering the time of the year, December 2019 to December 2020, the figures are really good, and the pressure is good. Hence why the stamp duty issue is really hanging over everybody, especially with time coming up towards the end of March, because at the beginning of the year, the first couple of weeks of the year, it takes a little bit of time for people to settle in and get back to some sort of normality. And so really we've lost probably another, 4 or 5 weeks out of that time, coming towards the end of March. So it is quite crucial for the stamp duty to be dealt with. But it's good to see that people's motivation is still there as far as moving is concerned.
Yeah, if you look at the quarters, Joe, so the last quarter of the year, number of completions was 71% higher than the previous quarter. So that is dramatic change, isn't it?
That's huge. I mean, it just goes to show what we're thinking. Interestingly enough, that brings me into a little point that I picked up as well. That in spite of all of the things that are happening in the world for pandemic and moving home, etc., what is interesting is the number of businesses that have now increased. In other words, over the last year, new businesses opened within the areas of Berkshire and Buckinghamshire and so forth, have been in excess of 2,000 new businesses that have opened. And so whilst people are sitting at home, they are not restructuring their own life, they're rethinking the way they're living, but also beginning to become entrepreneurial more so than ever before. And so that's a little encouragement to say that we haven't lost it. We have the will for living. We still want to get out there and do our thing and have our dreams come true. And I think that's fantastic news that, in spite of all that's been thrown at us, we're resilient to say, what, I'm going to do something different. And I think that's fantastic news.
And you could argue that there's never been a better time to set up a small business at this time, because so many companies are beginning to understand that that's the way the country and the economy is moving. So the propensity for bigger companies to deal with small one-man, two-man, three-man bands, etc., small SMEs, if you like, has never been more understanding.
And considering some of the bigger high street brands took a bath throughout the 2020 time, there's every reason for the small person to be able to one-man band, two-man band, whatever you want to call it, to go out there and say, look, I can do this. And many of those people today starting those businesses are probably some of them that have come as a breakup of those particular operations. But I mean, I'm sure you'll remember the same as I do, and some of our viewers would. I mean, some of the high street names that were etched in our sort of lives, and we just did it because that's who you go to. It was the go-to place to do certain things, are no longer there. So never say never. You just don't know what's going to happen. But what is good is that it hasn't actually dampened the enthusiasm in my mind of people's wish and want to sort of go out there and get on and achieve. And that's excellent news.
There was a lovely story on the BBC website this week, which I happened to find midweek, of a young lad who was furloughed, and he decided to do something about it rather than just accept the money. So he Googled and watched a video, I think, on YouTube about how to make money and what to make money from, and basically importing goods from China was the suggestion given to him. So he did exactly that. The guy is under 21, I forget, he's 19, something like that. Don't quote me on it, obviously. But he's very, very young. And he's basically decided to import these goods. So lo and behold, he did exactly that, managed to import some goods, put them up on a website online. He said, you don't need anything other than a couple of web pages now. Did that, and now he's making £12,000 a day.
Well, there you are. That tells you where people's minds are, and we can change our goals, our strategy, our whole thinking, just by Uncle Google, really.
Yeah.
Just if in doubt, Google it out, and that's where it's going to be. So I'm sure there's somebody out there that does that. The interesting thing about that, just thinking about it, is the person that's obviously made the suggestion of doing that business. I wonder what they're actually doing, or was it just somebody trying to be, facetious and say, well, why don't you import goods from China? And someone's just taken that on board. But if the person who made that suggestion actually were doing the same thing, if this guy's earning 12,000, what is he earning? So there's scope for everybody. There's scope for everybody. And I think given the time of life where we are, I think it's really encouraging to see that young people, old people, older people, everybody's having a go. And I think that's great news.
Yeah, exactly. Last point on that, it's interesting that despite the fact that you could argue that, the fact that the last quarter was 70% up on the previous quarter was because the earlier quarters in 2020 were so down because of the pandemic and the first lockdown. But nonetheless, it's probably worthwhile getting everything into perspective and looking at the overall figures for the year. And actually, the sales in 2020 overall for the whole year were 11.5% down on what they were in 2019, which is not surprising, but also I suppose you could say that's not bad considering what a year we had.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, all figures that are encouraging and making it look good in a time that hasn't been brilliant for personal circumstances. And whilst we're putting a spin on the positive side, I have to say that obviously our heart goes out to all of those that have lost their loved ones during this time, and it's a hard time for them to sort of get together, but take some medicine from this situation, take some knowledge from the fact that there are people out there also done the same thing and actually turned around and turned things around for themselves to make things happen. Because at the end of the day, I have my little own saying, if it's to be, it's up to me. And I think this is the case. You've got to get up there and get on with it. And that's what they've done. And that's excellent news. It's very encouraging all around, Paul.
Just making a note of that one. If it's to be, it's up to me. That's a gem. Thank you so much for that. I'll take that one. Little tip that came out this week, thanks to Property Industry Eye, which told us that if you're looking to buy, or if you are in the process of buying a new build before the 31st of March, and the stamp duty holiday coming to an end, and you're not sure whether you're going to make it, apparently, according to this tax expert here, Sean Randall, if you make your first instalment on the ground rent before the 1st of April 2021, so in other words, by the deadline, if you make that first payment, that first instalment on your ground rent, you can lock in the price. Interesting, Joe?
It's always good to know that you can lock in any prices, to be honest with you. And if the government and the tax situation allows you to do that, I think it's a nice little gem to have. And I think it's good to share that take advice. And we're at that time of the year where people are doing their your tax returns, and obviously April will come in, and there'll be changes, and that's some of the things where we'll see Rishi will probably make some changes going forward in order to make sure that he gets some of this money that he's been spending out back. But I think every little helps, as is the phrase that comes to my mind on that one. So that's excellent news.
It says here at the end of this article, the act that was introduced, or the act that introduced the stamp duty holiday, already extends the holiday to buyers that substantially perform the sale contract before April 1st. So that's interesting, isn't it? So basically, if you're substantially through the sale process, then it's going to allow to complete, it seems to say there.
As I said to you earlier on at the beginning, there will be some level or change of extension that will happen. And whilst it's been set in stone, Paul, that 31st of March is the cutoff day, I'm fairly certain that those transactions that are in the system will have some sort of removal of the belt buckle slightly to say you've got a bit more room, and if you're that close, then you can complete it. So it'll come in a different form maybe, but I think people will be allowed to get on with it. I suppose part of the reason why it hasn't been changed, Paul, is probably because I think he doesn't want to increase the bubble. In other words, he doesn't want people going out there being mad about trying to buy and adding on and doing the things that they've been doing in order to try and buy the house, and saying, look, can I squeeze this in? Can I squeeze this in? It's just got to come to a point that is got to cut off. So the cut-off point was the 31st, or is the 31st of March 2021. However, I'm sure those transactions that are in the system will find their way of completing.
Yeah. And that will be a good way for Richie to keep face on this one, wouldn't it? Because rather than sort of do a U-turn and extend it, as everyone's suggesting, to September, what he could say is, right, those of you in the system have until the end of July, let's just say, to get everything done that's already there.
It's the same difference, isn't it? It's like I said, I'm sure that there'll be something that'll come out in that will give people the time and the benefit of the stamp duty, and the government really can't afford to a large extent, after, in my mind, the good that they've done, to be doing the bad that can happen in a heartbeat over something that is trivial by comparison. Really, it's just about time. That's all they're looking for.
Enough on stamp duty already. Let's take a look at a subject that I know you are keen to talk about, Joe. And it is interesting about connectivity. There's a lot of talk about HS2, of course, and extending the north to the south, or the south to the north, whichever way you want to look at it. And we have been pretty good over the years of extending north to south, but actually east to west, we've not been so good. I mean, you think about how long it took to get a line from East London from the west side of London. And the same thing here from Oxford to essentially Cambridge and beyond. And you wanted to make some comments about this.
Yes. So this really brought something home to me, Paul, in terms of connections, connectivity, location, and all of the things, all the factors that are actually taken into consideration when people want to move home, albeit for personal reasons or for investment. And when I look back and think about the connections that we've enjoyed and enjoy in the south, one of the things that was obviously very important is the connection to the north. And obviously HS2 has been going on for some time. And ultimately, that will become beneficial to those that want to use it. Taking into consideration the current pandemic and the way we have started to think about how we live and how we move and how we work, has actually taken a completely new vision in my mind. So what was originally about the right schools, the right station, the right location, and of course being in the country or being in town, because it was just easier to be in town, or having a pied de terre in town for those persons that decided that they were living in the north in the country but wanted to have a bolt hole in London. All of those things have actually started to take a massive change. And this particular scenario of a old line that is now being put back into reuse between Cambridge and Oxfordshire, really sort of brought that home to me. I mean, considering that we have those two are, two of the top universities that the world travels to get to either Cambridge or Oxford was always to go into London and then come back out again. So you'd literally travel from Oxford all the way down into Marylebone or wherever the station was, or Paddington, and then you have to get another train from another London station to go back out, either was towards Cambridge or to somewhere else. And I think it's good to see that initiative has been taken to have a transportation across. What that does, in other words, is also for all those people that have been thinking recently about working from home, connectivity, internet connection. And internet connection is a huge win now. There was a talk about schooling, there was talk about working, there was talking about motorway links and so forth. But one of the number one things now people look at is internet connections, and it's huge. If your connection and the Wi-Fi facilities and the internet connection is rubbish in that area, that is going to affect house prices. That is going to affect why people don't move there, and that's going to make a huge. So part of this whole discussion, really, for me, was look at the connectivity from Cambridge to Oxford across. Then you look at all of the stations and the locations that you're going to stop at, and every one of those destinations has now got the importance of house prices perhaps increasing, demand on homes increasing, people wanting to invest in those areas, people wanting to live in those areas, because it's much greener, it's more countryside. It now adds another whole dimension to an area that probably most people probably do that. I was looking at like Bletchley, which is just outside Milton Keynes. And Milton Keynes in itself, probably not the best of the modern towns, because it was one of those 70s towns that was created all around roundabouts. But, places like Bletchley, you go further down from Oxford towards some of the other villages. All of those things are going to, become accessible, more desirable. And it also means that if you think of the coronavirus scenario, you're actually not going to have to go into London to come back out again. So, it's a safer way to be able to travel across when you actually don't need to go into the city. And of course, what better two cities than other than London is Oxford and Cambridge. I mean, they're just beautiful places to visit and beautiful places for people to go to. So I just felt that this was a really good a point to bring to everybody and think about potentially future investment. Not so far. I mean, Oxford from London is within an hour and a half maximum driving distance wise. And obviously with the tube and the train, it'll probably become lesser. And it's the same as the Crossrail effect had on areas like Reading, Slough, all the way along the Paddington line, basically. And look what happened to there. The development went crazy, the house prices went crazy, people got more accessibility. And of course, you've got excellent countryside around all of those things. So I think connections are very important, but they're not just about road. They are about rail. And also, what you mustn't ever forget going forward is they're about internet. Make sure you got the right internet. I had a call, in fact, this week from a neighbor who actually said to me, which company are you using for internet? And the reason was that all of a sudden, and this is a genuine discussion, that all of a sudden, grandchildren and him as a business and his wife who was working all are at home, all using the internet to connect to their work. And guess what? Anyone that wasn't good enough was always falling. So there's a sense of arguments beginning to happen of who's on the internet. And someone's watching a movie on there and they're saying, can you come off of there because we want to do our work? So internet has become really, really powerful, and the quality of it makes a lot of difference. And it's going to be a big pressure on the internet companies to deliver. And equally, that's going to make a big difference in the value and the house prices. It'll be one of the things that will be taken into consideration when moving home in the future. So connectivity in every way has become very important. I just thought this was a good way to share that it's an important aspect that is considered when buying for yourself to live in as a family, or buying as an investment where people are likely to go to that maybe can't afford to buy but will live there, and therefore people will rent on those properties.
Yes, I think it's probably fair to say that things like Netflix are the arch enemy of Microsoft Teams. Anyone trying to get a Teams meeting going, and there's kids upstairs watching their Netflix or playing their games on their Xboxes, etc. It's always a ruiner of the quality of the video signal for sure. Joe, that's interesting, and I guess you would say that those are going to be areas to watch in terms of improvement on prices over the next few years.
Absolutely, and that's part of the reason that I wanted to bring it to the attention of our viewers and people that are interested in property, because at the end of the day, it is what matters in property, and location is as paramount as connectivity is. And this is one of the reasons I wanted to bring this to our viewers, that things like this, when they resurrect old lines and start to create accessibility, not just by road but also by rail, across the country, makes life easier for everybody. And the pandemic has made people think the way they think about how they live, and if they want to live in the countryside and enjoy the snow as we are doing out there today, but not have to worry about getting on the road and the rail network is there. All of these things are going to be key, and I think it's good. And if you look at that map that you put up there, I mean, some of the nice parts of the world are there, going across from Oxford to Cambridge, so it's very, very important to bear that in mind.
Indeed, and talking of property, we have a couple of things that I know you wish to talk about today, and one opportunity that's imminent beginning of next month with Fairview International, which is Crown Court, Joe.
Yes, so this is a property that Fairview International was instrumental in from the outset. Quite a nice little challenge that we've had, and it's coming to fruition now as time goes on. That's what it now looks like, or is beginning to look like, as they say, coming towards the end, just a bit of the finishing touches to go. So this was a former pub. It was a Sebastopol in Clewer Hill Road in Windsor. Those that maybe you're familiar with it, we arranged the sale on that originally, and the people that bought it got planning permission to knock it down and put a new development of 9 1- and 2-bedroom apartments, and those are now coming to the market beginning of next month, all but ready now, carpeted and so forth, and all starting from around £300,000. So a great opportunity for the first-time buyers. Windsor, got views of the Windsor Castle there, access to Legoland, and just generally it's a lovely area. So feel free to give us a call if you fancy having a look at it and taking an investment. There'll certainly be good renters, good sizes, very good sizes actually internally by comparison to some of the things I get to see. So do give us a call. The numbers are at the bottom. And for those who've got my number directly, give me a call and we'll arrange a viewing. We should have the keys probably by the end of next week.
Fantastic. Thank you, Joe. And the other property we wanted to look at is a slightly different property, in that the fact there is no property. It's just a piece of land at this stage. This is Horton Road.
Yes, so I thought this was quite interesting. A little story sort of dovetailing to the one that we had as a pub and converted into 9. And here is an opportunity, again, not too far. This one is a piece of land in Datchet. And the irony of it is that I've seen this look like this for too many years to think, Paul. It's been like that, hoarded for probably about 20 years that I can think back. It just hasn't made the space, but it's now being offered in our auction, Town and Country auction, London. It'll be and it's live on our site and available to be bought by the 23rd of February, when the auction date is. Just about a third of an acre. There was an old house on there, which is no longer there. It's just a straight piece of land. It is unconditional, but again, nice location, variety of potential usages that people can probably do with it. That's your choice. And we're guiding it at £500,000. So another method of sale. So a method of sale that I think is very successful, and each has its own course in order to do that. So the new ones that we were selling through Fairview would probably not be a good auction property because it's going to be some time. And here is a property that shows scope and development scope potentially for those that want to do it, subject to getting their right consent. And that's available at 500,000 through Town and Country London.
So there's no current access to the property, is there? But presumably you'll be able to arrange that when you get your planning permission.
Well, unless you want to start taking and hacking overgrown trees and God knows whatever else, this was the nicest view I could create of it, without. So thank God for whatever they call it, Google Maps nowadays. But the point is that if you stood at the road, it's just hoarded and it's just difficult to get into, and unfortunately, due to health and safety and so forth, and all the other caveats under the world that we have, it's just no way I can get you onto the land. But it is land, so what you see is what you get. That's the benefit.
And a good location, of course.
Great location.
Yeah. Okay. So let's just remind people how we can get in touch. There's the number on the screen now, Joe. So we've got Crown Court and Horton Road. Just resume that for me.
Yes, so the Crown Court is it's in Clewer Hill Road in Windsor. That's on with Fairview International, and so you can contact us on Fairview International, or you can get a hold of us on Town and Country Auction London, and that's for the property that we have in Datchet on the Horton Road. And those that are familiar will know it's a couple of doors away from the Tesco Express. That is there as well. So a great location for anything that somebody could see they can get planning permission for. So two different properties, but just good to share that there is a variety in everything.
Absolutely. So the the website address on the screen there, you can see www.fairviewipc.com for Fairview International, and Town and Country Property Auctions.co.uk for the land in Datchet. So, Joe, we're almost at the end for another week, and we managed to make it despite the weather. But we're in a situation where we're going to have some interesting guests over the next couple of weeks.
Yes, I mean, only Paul, due to pandemic and certain circumstances and people being away and committed over the festive season. So I have joining us over the next 2-3 weeks a host of different guests coming forward, which we will bring on board and have shares, and that will cover anything from lettings with Cam Carlera, who is that's his baby, that's what he does. And Cam's been on the show before, but he was away over Christmas. But he's looking to come back and join us and give us wisdom on the letting section. And then, of course, we'll have mortgage experts talking about the types of models which we've spoken about ourselves and what are there. But it'll be great to get some insight from the guys that are doing it all the time. So that would be something there. I've got Russell Bra from the Asian Jewish Business Network that is due to join us. He was going to join us just before Christmas again. And I was on an Asian Jewish network this week. It's interesting that how many people are looking at succession planning. So one or two of the guys from that team will come in and join us and talk about succession. All subjects that I've actually covered, Paul, to be honest with you,
yes.
as sort of a fluffier way rather than an expert way, because those are the basics knowledge. But of course, I'm not in a position to give you, advice on that. That could be, not the correct advice. So, but certainly experience-wise, I've got plenty of experience and knowledge and connections of people that need that, and we're happy to put anyone that needs to be connected to those. So, yeah, a whole variety of subjects to come forward to. And dealing with it. And I've had a couple of approaches now from builders who want to talk about, that, and architects, and of course, the ladies' favorite, the kitchen fittings, and how the designs and things like that work. So a host of things over the weeks to come. But we'll try and keep you active with your graphs, Paul, because I know you like that as well. So
I shall have to go and do additional research if we've got extra guests, won't I?
you'll have to. Yeah, it's a bit more homework for you, my friend.
Lovely. Well, that's it. We're at our time, I'm afraid, Joe. As always, the time does seem to go so quickly. Thank you to everyone who's watched the show. Hope you found it of interest this week. And of course, we will be back with our special guests next week for another Property Matters.